Classical Conversations presents Refining Rhetoric with CEO Robert Bortons, a podcast where faith, business, politics, and classical education meet. Join us as we use the classical tools of rhetoric to seek truth in every arena of life.
Hello and welcome back to another exciting episode of Refining Rhetoric. And today we're going to be exploring the intersection of philosophy, theology, and practical ethics with Dr. Bill Davis and Noah Sweatman. Bill is the professor of philosophy at Covenant College and adjunct professor of systematic theology at Reformed Theological Seminary. Well, that's a mouthful. I think that just means he's very, very smart, and he's been at school a really long time. He talks about medical ethics, an analyst of Tolkien and Lewis, and so I'm really excited to be talking to him today. He's been married for over 40 years, and they have 4 children, all of whom were homeschooled. And we have an understudy of his, Noah. He is a Classical Conversations graduate, and so he's definitely smarter than I am because I only went to CC for 3 years because my mom didn't invent it early enough. But now he's an admissions counselor at Covenant College, and he's equipping high school students to navigate the college decision process. And he considers it a privilege to walk alongside high schoolers as they make the big decision and find what the Lord is calling them to pursue. I know that we have Classical Conversation students there. Our Chief Information Officer, Bob Rose, his daughter is a freshman, I believe, at Covenant College. Although if she brought in some credits, maybe she's a sophomore or something in the system. But Bill and Noah, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
It's great to be here.
All right, Bill, I want to talk to you first, ask you the first question. You've studied philosophy and you teach philosophy. So how has your study of philosophy deepened your theological understanding, and how do you really teach these to these young people?
So the scriptures are written by people who were inspired by God, but there are also people who grew up and immersed in the world of classical thought. Although they correct erroneous assumptions in classical philosophical thought, they also draw on it. So, for example, Paul in Philippians 2, in the middle of showing us the glory of Jesus, who set aside all the honor he deserved in order to accomplish our redemption, he uses Aristotle's category of form to say that Jesus, although he was in the morphe, what Aristotle's word for form, although he was in the morphe of God, he didn't consider equality with God something to be grasped. Mm-hmm. So at the same time he's using Aristotle, he's correcting the Greek understanding of male excellence in, like, Achilles, who never set his glory aside for anybody. And so the more I learn about the history of the thought world that the New Testament authors knew, much of it is philosophically rich. And so I'm able to use that background to enrich my understanding of the Bible. But the same is also true when I'm reading the church fathers. Christian theology, from the first century on, is always written in the midst of a philosophical environment. Mm-hmm. So when it's in the Middle Ages, it's super rich in Aristotelian and Neoplatonic thought. And the more I know about those systems, the easier I find it to both to understand what philosophers are doing in the Middle Ages, but then also to explain it to students.
I'll switch over to Noah real quick. Noah, I believe you took his classes the senior year, even though it was outside of your major. So how was that experience, from your classical education and classical conversations background? How did Covenant College and Dr. Davis, form you, and what were those discussions like?
Yeah, so it was really funny how I started to get in Dr. Davis's class, because senior year I was looking to have I had enough credits, it was going to be a pretty easy year, and I had 2 friends of mine who were training both to be doctors, and they were taking Dr. Davis' bioethics class, and they were like, Noah, you need to join us. And I was like, no, I don't like anything medical. Needles scare me. I don't want to have to look at any pictures involving blood. And they're like, they'll be fun. Maybe you could take it pass fail. Mm-hmm. So at that point, I was like, okay, so still easy semester. Sure, I'll go hang out with my friends. I think I ended up being like one of 3 non-bio majors in the class. But it was so cool to see. So I was sports management and I double minored in business and sociology, so very much in the business area. But to go into a bioethics class and just see the beauty of God in a whole new way, and just to see God's people, like in my peers, think so deeply and so caringly about others. And that's what struck me the most, is that some of the terminology, never having really taken a philosophy class before, or even a bio class, was a little lost on me, but you could still see the care in everyone and how we discuss subjects. And I always told everyone, now as a missions counselor, it is my most, like, when if they are like, hey, what class should I take when I come to Covenant for just like a fun or something interesting, I always use bioethics as an example. Because I was like, never in a million years would high school Noah say, I want to take bioethics. But then as a graduate now, I would say it was one of the most influential classes on my time there, just because it got me thinking about the world in a new way. And to be honest with you, I left class usually feeling more sad because the world is a dark place sometimes.
Yeah.
But I also felt hopeful in the fact that we have people deeply thinking about these things and trying to show the love of Jesus at all stages of life, even at the very end.
Yeah.
Well, I just like to encourage students. My senior year, much like you, I took a class outside of my major. I was an industrial engineering major. I took actually was about 2 classes short of a philosophy minor, but I was at school long enough, so I didn't need to stick around for that. But
Right.
apologies. But I took a 400 level history course on the assassination of JFK and Martin Luther King Jr. So, and it was funny because I was sitting in there and I knew the professor and I wanted to have a class from him. And all the other history majors are like, why are you in here? This is the hardest class in our major. I mean, the book's like that thick. And you had to read like 3 of them. I was like, oh, this is my fun class. So I squeaked by, somehow got a B in there. But I'm hopefully, yes, side tangent, hopefully Donald Trump will release those records because I want to know what actually happened. But bioethics, going back to our conversation, I mean, I think we see that's a huge issue in society today. I mean, with the chemical castration of minors and the do no harm and those sorts of things that are going on. I'm glad to hear that Christians are having those conversations at the collegiate level and helping people understand both, those type of things and how to combine both of them. So how does Bill, the 10 Commandments in modern life? Does the 10 Commandments say anything about bioethics?
Well, they say quite a bit. Noah probably remembers one of the articles that we read in the class was an argument that children should be taken away from their parents if the parents oppose gender reassignment surgery for them. The argument was that was child abuse, not to accede to the child's true gender identity. And part of it, we read that because the textbook we use for the class is the most widely assigned textbook on bioethics in any university anywhere, which means we're going to read arguments that are really influential, but often where we disagree with them. And it turns out not to be very difficult to figure out what their argument is. The hard part is figuring out how can we lovingly join a conversation where we aren't immediately shut down. I don't know if you remember the conversation about that topic. We didn't spend very long figuring out that the position that was being taken was wrong. The hard part was figuring out how do we help someone who thinks it's obviously true move off of that. And one of the ways to start is to recognize that we have from God a description of what a full, flourishing human life is supposed to be. That's what God's law is. God gave the law the 10 Commandments were given at Sinai to a people who've just been delivered from slavery as a mark of God's love for them. It's not a list of things that they would enjoy that they could avoid in order to prove to God that they deserve to belong to him. They already belong to him. And he said, live this way and your life will be full in the best way possible. And what's happened in the culture around us right now is they think of God's law as nothing but don't have fun. And so the beginning of the conversation is to see that knowing how we're designed is the way forward, and leaving it to children to figure out what their biology is supposed to be is like, that is not how we were designed. But you can't start with God condemns what you're doing. What they need to know is that there's a pattern for the way things are supposed to work. Have you looked at outcomes? So then you start looking at the empirical evidence. What percentage of people regret that they went through the transition? And the numbers are staggeringly high. But knowing that God has given a design for us is the place to begin in our thinking. And it gives us a place to begin in a conversation with people who don't know God's law. I don't know if that helps, but knowing God's design means you don't have to spend very long trying to figure out how things ought to be. You can figure out, then the hard part is we work together to be friends and to love people.
Yeah. So Noah, what was it like to have those conversations? Because I'm sure at Covenant College, you all are, kind of given the biblical worldview approach. And, I'm sure that, it's a PCA school typically, and not that everyone goes there, that is, but, how are those conversations? Because I would think that they would probably be one-sided, maybe in our direction or right now, but thinking about how I'm going to, address those conversations with someone who's from a university that has a completely different worldview.
Yeah, and I think that's not to get too much on like, oh, Covenant's so great, even though I work here and I graduated from here, so I do love it. But that's one of the things I probably most enjoyed about that class is it is a little one-sided in the way of like everyone in that room is a confessing believer. And I would say for the most part in every classroom, you're going to have people who authentically are trying to find Jesus and love Jesus well. Doesn't mean we always get it right, but that is the pursuit. But what I also love is that, like Dr. Davis is saying, or Bill is saying, is that we use the most used medical textbook. We still read what most universities read, and we still read and we still study works of literature and history that are commonplace in universities and then apply the biblical worldview. So we understand where the other side's coming from. And I think the challenges of that room is not getting in a bubble. And I think Bill did a great job of leading our class to think that way of like, not playing devil's advocate, but kind of saying this way of, hey, we all come from a Christian worldview. How are we going to love well those who don't? Because that's why I think society in the large is facing a lot of too, is that it's hard to love well right now. It's very hard to love well in all the ways we communicate over social media and even in person. So having a classroom where I think the professors try to get us to think about those things, but then challenge us to say, now, how would you love the other person well? And I think that's the beauty of it. I know that's not like the most direct answer, but I think that's so nice about those classroom experiences is talking with our peers and trying to figure out, okay, you're in a secular hospital. How are you having this conversation with somebody and trying to practice that?
Yeah, those are definitely hard questions and questions Christians are going to, and if you can struggle with it in I'll say a safe space, but not necessarily how the left uses it, before you have to encounter it, right? Because, you're going to possibly have nurses that are working in a secular university and or secular hospital, and they're going to be told, hey, you need to perform this thing that goes against their moral conscience. And how are they going to either opt out or have those conversations before they have to be put in a spot where they might compromise their morality? So,
Robert, you asked an excellent question there, because one of the movements we discussed in class is there's a pretty serious effort. I'm not sure what a change in administration is going to mean for this effort, but an effort to remove the option of being a conscientious objector. As a nurse, if you get an order, so up until very recently, the assumption was that if they ordered you to do something that was contrary to your conscience, you could say, I would like to be a conscientious objector here, and I will find someone who will take my place. But they're trying to remove that on the grounds that it denies equal access to care to people. And so it's a question that everyone going into the health professions needs to deal with. You need to think through, like, at what point would I have to quit rather than do the job? So we had those conversations. Some of it is a matter of keeping very close track of trends in the medical world because it's not happening at the same speed everywhere. You're much more likely to have this problem if you're working at a hospital in the Northeast than in the South.
Correct.
So all these things have to be taken into account. But in all of those cases, our job is to represent Christ well. And often that means doing hard things.
Yeah, no. One of those successful ads in this previous election was the one of Kamala Harris talking about taxpayers funding transgender surgeries
Right.
for illegals, for inmates. Of course, if you have a traditional healthcare plan, you're probably subsidizing that with your dollars because they're paying for those things. That's why we use a service called Sedera Health. That's I guess a cash pay type option thing here at Classical Conversations. And even from our perspective is, there's certain things that we're kind of legally required to do because of the size of our business. But even that, we're always trying to figure out how can we honor God in all that we do at Classical Conversations and not partake in this, morally reprehensible situation. And
Yeah.
she was running, and that wasn't a big part of her campaign. Obviously, it wasn't the thing that she was going to say out loud, but removing the rights of conscientious objectors. And so if you're a nurse at a hospital and the lady wants an abortion and you think that's wrong, it's either do it or be fired. And you didn't even have an option to say that this is against my moral code. And this was something that I wasn't hiding when I was hired, that this is things that I'm not going to partake in because I believe in the do no harm aspects of medical ethics. Now, I do kind of want to joke about it, but there's all these leftist people who say that they're going to move to Canada, and you wrote a book about departing in peace because Canada and some of these European countries are suggesting young people with no issues whatsoever, except for maybe depression, go ahead and end their life, where they are doing physician-assisted suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a book, Departing in Peace, that talks about this difficult topic. So, and other end-of-life decisions from a biblical perspective, I guess probably like when to pull the plug, that's not necessarily medical, right? You have people that live 20 years in a coma and they have machines that are pumping their hearts and feeding them and those type of things. And there's, I would probably guess, less or more ambiguity on what our responsibilities are in that sort of situation. So tell us about this book and some of those philosophical and theological things that are in it.
Sure. The book arose out of a perceived need. The most common cases that I encountered volunteering as an ethicist in a hospital, a collection of hospitals, but easily the most common case that rose to the level of the attention of the ethics committee was a case where you have a patient who's unconscious, and then the family has to decide what to do about the machines that are keeping them alive. Now, in the case where the machines are supporting their recovery so that they'll regain consciousness, that's not complicated. There's no question the thing to do is to use the machines in a therapeutic way with the goal of cure or to restore to them the ability to leave the hospital. The problem comes when, medically speaking, humanly speaking, they're not going to regain consciousness. That God could always cure them. God has that power. But medically speaking, they're never going to regain consciousness. So then the medical team turns to the family and says, would it be okay for us not to do the chest compressions and the shock and the push adrenaline into them? Is it all right if we do not attempt to resuscitate them if their heart stops? And usually people say, oh, it is time to stop fighting if their heart stops. The people most likely to say, no, we want everything to continue are Christians. They're Christians who think, and either they'll say something like, we want to use the machines to give God time to work a miracle. Mm-hmm. Or they say, we want to use the machines so that we have time to develop the faith we need so that God will work a miracle in response to our faith. Now, everybody listening to this realizes that there's probably something theologically wrong with both of those. God doesn't need machines to work a miracle, and it's not going to be, God's not waiting to see whether we can come up with enough faith for him then to bless us with a miracle. Mm. But when you're in the middle of watching a loved one die, you're not looking for a theological argument. You're in the middle of grieving, and you're going to need somebody to help you think through it, who recognizes the truth of God's word and the good faith reliability of doctors. Doctors and nurses are trained to heal people. If they are suggesting to you, we've reached the limit of what medicine can do, they're almost certainly right. It's super rare right now, but it's made more scary because there are places in the world, including the United States, 10 states in the United States, not Tennessee or Georgia where I do my work, but it's permissible for physicians to administer a lethal dose so that you get drowsy, fall asleep, and never wake up. So in Canada, it's called medical assistance in dying, MAID, and I think that's going to become the standard way of referring to it in the United States, because there's no mention of the word suicide. Right. It's just medical assistance in dying. You've reached the point where you would like doctors to help you die in a peaceful way. Hmm. Well, if you don't,
the grammar wins the war.
Yeah, and that's been a part of it. Is what you call it shapes what people think is happening. The heart of the movement for medical assistance in dying is a confident belief that our lives belong to us. And the Bible says that's not true, that God is the giver of life, and that it's up to God when our life ends. So when I'm working with a family that's holding on, I don't say, look, your loved one's life has become pointless. Turn the machines off. It's to say, we're going to shift. This is what the medical team wants the conversation to be. We want to shift the goal of care from cure to care, to where the focus is on keeping them comfortable. If their heart stops, we're going to keep them comfortable. We're not going to restart things. That's not the same thing as you're not going to bring about their death. You may reach a point where the medical team is aware that the things that are being done, the ventilator that's pushing air in and out of their body, and the feeding tube and the IV drip that are pushing water, nutrition and hydration in, are actually making them more uncomfortable. They're causing pain, but not doing anything to restore them. And the medical team may say, we would like to turn these things off because they are causing pain without accomplishing anything. And so my job is to join those conversations as somebody who knows Jesus. Typically, it's people who know the Lord, and they need to know that it's not that the doctors have given up, that the doctors can be trusted, that these machines are increasing their pain, and we'd like to turn off the ventilator and watch to see if they breathe on their own. And then if they do, they provide all the care to keep them going. But if they don't breathe on their own, they keep them as comfortable as they can. And typically the people in that circumstance, they then die. But it wasn't the doctor or the family that ordered their death, they withdrew something painful, and then God took them home. So the book is occasioned by a long string of those cases, and then the need to write what would a believer need to know if they were in that situation. So it's a couple of chapters of theology, and then a lot of cases. Just to like, what would you do if your loved one was in, it's your mom who's unconscious and in the bed, and the doctors come to you and say this. And we did a lot of that in class. We said, so what would you do? And then how would you fill out an advance directive so that your family would know what you want? And I made everybody fill out an advance directive.
Nice. Well, Noah, Dr. Davis is making your job easy because I could talk to him all day. I maybe even enroll in Covenant myself if I didn't have 3 little children and bills to pay. But yeah, tell us a little bit. We have a lot of people that listen to this podcast are, of course, classical conversations families, or people that know people in classical conversations, and that's how they stumble upon it. Tell us a little bit about, going into Covenant College from classical conversations, and just what that experience was like, and were you well prepared? And
Yeah. So my CC class, I started in Challenge B, and then I have 3 younger siblings who are some of them are still in it. One of my other siblings have finished, but I went through Challenge B, graduated to Challenge 4. My graduating class was 3 students, so me and 2 others. 2 of us came to Covenant actually. And we were roommates freshman year. That was really fun. But honestly, I felt really prepared and honestly surprised. I think now as a admissions counselor, I work with a lot of homeschool families. We have about 29% of our students here were homeschooled in high school. So I work with a lot of families who are just worried that the homeschool education they provided isn't enough. Mm-hmm. And in one way, I fully understand that going through it myself, because you don't have as much comparison points. You don't have a class ranking. I don't go to school every day and see other people go to detention. And even though that's not like healthy ways of comparison, that is ways we compare ourselves to other students.
Well, I did get a lot of dates in college telling girls about God Victorian. I have a small private school.
Yeah.
You did? It didn't work for me.
So I would use the joke of like, yeah, I'm the top in my school, and they're like, well, who's your school? And I was like, well, my sister who's 3 years younger than me, and then my brothers who are in kindergarten. But hey, I'm still at the top. But what I really loved about Covenant, though, is all those worries and concerns about being behind, or did I learn enough, were put away pretty quickly. I was never someone who loved school. I loved CC, but I definitely gave my mom multiple headaches of just fighting her on doing work. But then to see all that work and education come to college, and then me start to develop a love of learning. That truly is like my goal when I first came to college was I played baseball here was play baseball and pick the easiest major possible so that I can scoot by at a 2.5 GPA and keep playing. And I think Dr. Davis is shaking his head because I think Dr. Davis shakes his head because he saw the senior I was not that student. And it only took me a few months to realize I really love learning and that I've been prepared to learn well. And that's what I love about CC is I think it teaches you how to think well. I think Challenge 1 through 4 all prepare you, and even when you start leading classes in Challenge 4, to think about the topics deeply. And then when you go to college, where inherently you're thinking about things deeper, you're already there. Like your interest level, you're excited to learn, and CC builds that excitement. So then after freshman year, instead of being a 2.5 GPA, I'm a 3.5. And then sophomore year, I'm a 3.9. And then I stay there, not because I think I inherently just got smarter one day. I think it was all that teaching me how to learn and just really helped me love learning well. So I know that was like a long ramble, but I love the connection CC has to Covenant and that kind of like that pipeline of teaching you to learn well, Covenant, and other colleges as well, fostering that learning. So then at your time, you can appreciate what you've had previously even more.
Mm.
This is, it's common. I've seen students, this is my 28th year at Covenant, so I've seen a lot of students come through, and the most important task I have is to get them to turn the corner from thinking that college is something they need to get over with in order to get to real life, to get them to see that, first of all, this is real life, that the habits that you're forming and the way you treat each other are the habits that you're going to carry into your marriages and in the workplace and in the life you live in your churches. So first, see, this is real life already, and it's time to be a grown-up. It's not the last 4 years of being a child. But then also for them to see that the learning part is fun in itself. It's not just a means to making more money or getting the job that you want. It's valuable in itself and fun. And the students who come from homeschool and especially classical conversations background, they already know that. And so I don't have to convince them. And we can make progress a lot faster because I'm not having to lay that foundation of delight that is pretty typical of students who have the kind of background that Noah does.
Hey everyone, this is a little annoying part where we have to break into the episode and tell you about some of the stuff going on, but this is super exciting. You're going to want to pay attention to this. Are you looking to become a better everyday educator? Join other homeschool parents in your area at a 2025 Practicum event. Hosted by a local classical conversations leader, every summer, these parent conferences provide an opportunity for new and experienced homeschool parents or parents thinking about homeschooling to gather, learn, and practice the classical arts. At this year's Practicum, you can practice the 15 skills of learning, and we're thrilled to begin using content from our brand new curriculum, the Math Map. We'll use the dimensional structure of mathematics to frame questions and find patterns to see the unseen. Sound confusing? You'll be surprised at how this approach works. This is a discussion for all ages to grow our classical education skills together. Participate in table talk discussion with other parents and learn how to engage your own students in the math conversation that transcends the ages. Discover how the classical skills of learning and the dimensional structure of mathematics helps us see and frame questions, find patterns, enables us to see the unseen, and better understand God and our universe. To find out where your local Practicum meets, just visit ccpracticum.com. That's ccpracticum.com. Now let's get back to the show. Yes, I know we talked to a lot of professors and they just say that there's just something different about the students, whether it's a light in their eye or something that just makes them stand out and makes them more enjoyable. So I'm sure, Noah, you've been tasked with recruiting more students to Covenant and, what are some of those things? Because college is, of course, about finding a good match. And so what are some of the things that y'all are looking for when you're recruiting, and what are those people that are going to be successful and someone who's going to enjoy these conversations with someone like Dr. Davis?
I think for Covenant specifically, the first thing we're looking for is someone who loves Jesus. I think that is like number one by a large margin. We can teach you to learn well. We can even teach you to grow your faith, but we want someone who loves Jesus and wants to love him deeper. So that's number one. I would say number two, we're looking for students. I'm trying to figure out how to say this exactly right, but we're looking for students who want to experience something bigger than just transactional learning. I think so often now, and it's even proven, which is how we deal with colleges, and you can see how colleges are trying to build bigger facilities and more money into it because we have treated it more like a transaction now in modern day of I pay you money, so you should give me an A and give me a good degree so I can get a good job.
And a great experience.
Yes, and right. Let me have fun and party while I do this. Like that is kind of what I think the modern idea of a college is.
You guys have a floating pool. What do they call those things? No.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I can't remember the name, but yeah.
A lazy river.
Yeah.
A lazy river.
Now, I'm not against adding a lazy river to Covenant. I just want to make that clear when I say we don't have one, but I'm not against it. So if we want to add one, I'm totally down.
So I should add that because we're on top of a mountain and it's a 20-minute drive to absolutely anything else except church, they have to make their own fun here, and because they undertake not to consume alcohol while they're students, it has to be fun that happens without being hammered, and that means that it's strange fun, It's creative and often bizarre fun, but it's also fun that you have to build together and you remember it because you weren't inebriated when you did it.
Yeah, and it develops real relationships. I think so. I would say, kind of going back to the original questions, like one, love Jesus. Two, we're looking for students who don't just want transactional learning; they want transformational learning. They want to be transformed by it. And then three, students who enjoy community. I think if you ask most people here, staff, faculty, graduates, or current students, they're going to say what was so special about Covenant, and it'll probably be the community. Because when you're around fellow Jesus lovers and faculty who love Jesus, who pray before an exam for you and ask for recall and wisdom, like that's special. And then just to kind of touch on the type of fun we have, one of our sayings in admissions is if we're your type of weird, then we're the place for you. And that type of weird is having a doctrine discussion during lunch. But then right after lunch, walking in and talking about your favorite Disney Marvel movie. Or maybe it's discussing like how we're going to play ultimate frisbee today, and like, oh, it's rainy. That's okay. We're going to still play football during a tornado warning, which I may or may not done.
May or may not have done.
But so that's kind of the three things: is students who love Jesus, they want transformational learning, and they're looking to have fun while doing it.
So I teach, just to pick up on the community point, there's a class that all first semester students take, and I teach it to transfer students. And so these are students who've come from other college experiences and have come to Covenant. And almost all of them say, I went to my previous school because they told me the community would be excellent. And it didn't work. And what I've learned is that community is not just, we're all in this together. They become much more specific about what it is about the community here that they value. What they value is that their friends hold them accountable. And the world is super shy about that. Everybody's afraid to be judgy. And here, community means that your friends are going to call you out when you skipped class for no good reason. They're going to say, how are you doing on that paper that we both have due later? And that's makes an enormous difference in the kind of work they do. They hold each other accountable. They pray for each other, and they're willing to share their prayer requests and the things they're praising God for. And the last one is, and this one surprised me, is they are expected from the very beginning that they will be in positions of leadership soon. Like, you may be in your first semester, but we need you getting ready to be the one who's leading the Bible study, not just going. You got any talent with music? We need you leading the singing. And this sense that they're being developed as community leaders, no matter who they are, is a big part of how they think about what kind of community they have.
Yeah, I didn't get that at a big state school. Not going to lie. Not going to lie to you. All right. Well, I've enjoyed this time. I think we're going to have you on again because there's a lot more questions that I want to ask, but we're running quickly out of time. So, for those, kind of final word, what wisdom would you share with those seeking to integrate philosophical thinking with their faith journey? And for to be thinking about after Dr. Davis answers that, and how can parents and educators better prepare the next generation to think deeply about these important questions, and what should they have prepared to help them be successful at Covenant College?
So it is typical for students who come from a homeschool environment, and especially from classical conversations, already to be thinking at a pretty high level philosophically, meaning they're interested in the assumptions that authors are making. They're interested in the culture around the author. What are they speaking into? What do they believe the problems are that they're trying to address? And so philosophers are asking questions about assumptions and then reading carefully to identify the argument. So there's something I'm supposed to believe as a result of this, and what are the reasons I'm supposed to have behind that? Well, that's mostly what philosophers care about, is analyzing arguments and identifying and testing assumptions. For people who have those skills, I have two pieces of advice, and these are what it means, what Christian philosophers or Christians with philosophical skills should be doing to serve the church and then the world through the church. The first one is bad news, and that is that Christians with philosophical skills need to be comfortable not giving a hot take. The world, everything about our media and environment says, if you can't be first and clever, we're not interested. The Bible doesn't say that first and clever is where the wisdom comes from. Wisdom comes from the people who've got a slow take, who've thought deeply. They've talked to others with experience. They've worked hard to understand a charitable account of what they just heard, rather than the quickest way to slam it to the ground. And so I would encourage all of your listeners to be content to be giving a slow, wise take rather than a quick, clever take. And the other piece of advice is that Christian philosophers should focus their efforts on building up the church, because the best apologists are those who can say, if you still aren't convinced, come to church with me. You will see what the gospel looks like lived out. And that has always been the most powerful communicator of the truth of the gospel, is the life that we live together. So if you're not sure what to do next, go heal something at your church. Be reconciled to people that you've offended. Repent. Lament the brokenness of the world together. Satan has no idea what to do with that. So start there.
Well, I just want you to know I feel personally attacked about my X account now.
Okay.
About quick and clever.
Look, it's quite possible to be quick and clever and true.
I just teasing. Yeah, Noah,
like
what do you think about parents?
I feel like that's kind of hard to follow up as far as like an ending, as like a closing statement there. But I guess thinking of like what would I tell students who are kind of in the college search, like, and the parents and what they're looking for. And I think as far as resources like ACT prep, SAT, there's so many things I could cover. But the three things that I want to encourage both parents and students to think about when they're looking at colleges, Covenant or any other school, is first off, pray. Pray for energy and wisdom. Typically with juniors and seniors, that is such a stressful time. If you play sports, you're in your last year of sports, you're trying to get recruited. If you're not, maybe you're doing debates. Maybe you're trying to figure out Latin in Challenge 4, which is its own unique challenge. It's like there's so much going on. So pray for the energy to search for college as well. And then wisdom that you make the right decision. And the beautiful thing about that is that the Lord already knows where you're going to go to school, or if you're going to go to school. Just college is not the only answer. I think that's so beautiful. And we forget sometimes that the Lord's will for us is like we think we can veer off the path. Like, oh, if I pick this school over this school, the Lord can't do amazing work. That is so far from the truth. And so to pray for wisdom and just thinking to calm one's heart, to say that the Lord has me, he will open the doors that need to be open and close the doors that need to be closed for any school. Second, on more of like a experience note, is make sure you visit your schools that you want to go to. Like when you make that school list, go visit them. It's like buying clothes off of Amazon without knowing your size. Mm-hmm. It's like you're probably not going to get it right. So you should probably try it on and make sure you have the right fit. And with college, with how expensive it is, go try it on for the day. Stay overnight. Talk to the professors. Sit in on the classroom. Go watch a sporting event. Like immerse yourself in that community for a day. And the biggest thing is watch the students around you. Because when you watch the students around you, they're going to affect the way you end up 4 years later. Like I'm still Noah from when I came to Covenant. Like I'm still Noah, but I'm a little bit different than I was in high school. And I think that's a good thing because I was around really good people. So make sure you want to be affected by that community. And then I would say the last thing, and this sounds a little backwards, but this is the best advice I received, is find a college you can have a bad day at. Mm-hmm. When you're at a college for 4 years, that's a lot of life to go through. And I would think it's hard to find anyone who's been to school who hasn't gone through hard things over 4 years. Either death in the family, forgetting you have a test that day, or even car trouble. There's so many things. So find a school that kind of feels like your favorite place to relax in your house. You know, so many people have like the recliner, the couch, maybe it's like the nook in the corner where it's like, I've had a bad day and I'm just going to sit. A school that has that feeling is probably a place you can thrive at because you're going to be comfortable.
Mm.
And so that's a long-winded answer, but those are the three pieces of advice that helped me and that I think students should focus on a lot during this time.
Well, I experienced all three of those things in college, and so it's not a bad piece of advice. So what's the URLs? What's the social medias? How can people find out more about what you have going on?
Yeah, I think from the admissions perspective, because I'm going to make Dr. Davis close it officially. But for the admission perspective is come visit us. You look at Covenant College and just type in visit afterwards, and you can see our visit info. Type in Covenant College and homeschool. We actually have a bunch of homeschool resources, even of how to make a transcript. We have all that on our website because we want to help homeschool families. And then if you do have any follow-up questions, all my details are on Covenant's website. I don't really have any social media outside of LinkedIn. But if you want to talk about homeschooling, college prep, or just want to chat about Covenant or just how my experience was here, please just give me a call. And my email is noah.sweatman@covenant.edu.
Awesome.
I am old. I have no social media accounts. I'm a lurker on Facebook because 20 years ago, I thought it would be good to get on to keep track of my students. And I still keep track of those students from 15 to 20 years ago. My email address is just davis@covenant.edu. I got an email address before they thought first names would matter.
Oh,
That's how long it's been. And I love to take questions about anything I talked about here or about medical ethics matters. My current research is on honoring parents when they become dependent on us. So what does it mean to honor your parents when they become frail or cognitively altered or just socially dislocated and angry? That's my current research. If you have questions about that, or you just want to tell me a story, that would help me. That's and that I bring that into the classroom. I'm talking about the work that I'm doing with my students now, but any of those matters, I'd love to hear from you.
And is there a place we can pick up your book, Departing in Peace?
It's at Amazon, and it's from Presbyterian and Reformed publishers. I think it's like $19.
Nice.
And it has a 4-week Sunday school curriculum that comes with it for free, that people have used, that I taught at 3 different churches before making it available. So that would be another resource.
Well, I've always said I want to go out in my sleep like my grandfather and not screaming like the 3 passengers in his car.
Oh, gee, that's terrible.
That's the podcast right there.
We'll probably edit that one out.
That's the mic drop one.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you for joining us today. Definitely go check out Covenant College. I've only can say good things about it. I've really enjoyed the conversation we had. Share this episode with a friend, especially if you know anyone with a junior or senior in high school that might be on the college pathway. And be sure to stay safe and tune in next week to another exciting episode of Refining Rhetoric.
Thank you for listening to Refining Rhetoric with Robert Bortons. Want more? Make sure to subscribe so you won't miss an episode. You can also follow us on social media to continue the conversation, and visit classicalconversations.com/rhetoric to find out how you can join a local homeschool community.